Are we good?
Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome to
Morning.
Criminal Justice Insider. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy.
And I'm Jeff Grant.
Hey, Jeff Grant, how are you?
Hi, Babz. It's so good to see you.
I almost wasn't seeing Jeff. I was wading through all the Jeff Grant email. You know, Jeff is his own communication universe.
No, we have Chloe now who's doing most of it. She's doing a great job.
Yeah, she is doing a great job. And so that's why I remembered to look up under her name instead of just looking under you. I was like, where is it? And I was like, oh, Chloe. So that's how I found it. Good morning, Chloe, if you're listening. Somebody's keeping up with you, Jeff, is crazy. I can't believe it. So
how you doing, Babz?
It's good. The pandemic is in full swing, of course. I lost a good friend the other day.
No.
Not to COVID, but for some other illness. And so it's been, it's really sort of pressing you to think about, the important things in your life, of course, that kind of thing. So, but for the most part, me, like everybody else, I'm holding my own. And you?
Pressing forward. There's a lot of SBA loan fraud out there, unfortunately. So
are they calling you about it? Are they talking to you? Everybody wants to talk to you about it.
Jeffrey's getting the calls. And this week we got a couple of events coming up on Monday evening, Monday at 5:00. Jackie Polverari and I are speaking virtually at the Justice Panel at Albertus Magnus College. And
yes, because that was rescheduled, right?
It was rescheduled. So that should be a great event. And registration's on our website or at Albertus Magnus's website. And I believe you have to register. There's no open link for that. And on Wednesday, Babz, you and I are going to be interviewing Tony Kane.
Yes.
At the Recovery and Trauma Conference that's put on by the Connecticut Women's Consortium. And we had a great conversation with Tony, didn't we? She's fantastic.
She's a very fascinating woman.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite prep calls of all time, really. It's not often that that we're taken by surprise, by the depth of somebody's story.
Yeah. She really makes me think about what is possible, or what is possible for people who've come out. Like she gives reentry a whole other different layer.
Yeah, you wouldn't pick it up from our Facebook event page or from the prisoners.org page. So anybody listening, it's not just a story of what she's doing now, because she has companies and she's a consultant all over the country, but the story of where she came from as a heroin addict who was out on the streets selling herself, and she had 88 arrests, and she was it's a horrifying and inspiring story. And so she'll be doing a keynote on on that morning at the conference, and also we'll be interviewing her at 12:40. So registration information on our Facebook page and also on prisons.org, and we hope you'll join us, because that should be a fascinating conference in general.
Yes. Yep. And so this morning we and let's say hello to Lynn, because yesterday was her birthday. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Lynn. And of course,
hello, Andrew, wherever he is in Andrew land.
We had our 4-way text yesterday that we do for everyone's birthday. So that was beautiful. So thank you, Babz, for your sentiments for Lynn's birthday. I know she appreciated it.
I love her. She's one of the most beautiful women. So, and thank you to the Community Foundation for making Criminal Justice Insider with Babz Rawls-Ivy and Jeff Grant possible.
This is true.
We are delighted today. We are. I think this is a different kind of guest. We've never had a guest from that's going to engage us at this kind of conversation. We have DJ Vodika. Vadika. How do we say your
Vodka?
last name?
Vodka?
It's
Vodka.
Vodka, DJ Vodka.
You know, I want to say vodka, but
Yeah, that's good. That's good too.
So he's the author of The Green Wall, and he's our guest this morning. And he's going to be talking a little bit about the prison system as from the other side, not as someone who served time, but as someone who was in charge of watching those that are serving time, and what he learned and experienced and exposed during his time in the prison system in California. And so we are very excited to talk to him and to hear. I don't think we've ever heard this kind of story before, Jeff. So welcome.
I don't think anybody has a story like DJ's. So it's fascinating. DJ, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Jeff, Rawls, thanks for having me on this podcast this morning. And really want to get into any questions you guys have. I'll answer any questions you need to know.
Well, let's start right from the beginning. So how did you come to being, is it a corrections officer, security officer? What is the correct title?
We're actually peace officers sworn in PC 832, but we are called correctional peace officers or correctional officer.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come to that work? Like, what does that mean?
I started the Department of Corrections in March of 1988 after I left the United States Army. I spent 4 years at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then shortly after that, my father sent me an application because the Department of Corrections in California were hiring, and the prison system was just booming because of the 3 strikes law. And they were building prisons like crazy, and they needed us to, wanted people to come in and start. And my first assignment after the academy was Corcoran State Prison, which is a level 4 SHU maximum security state prison, who housed Charles Manson at the time and other heavy, notably type people. And I actually if you guys want to talk about it, I actually got to meet Charles Manson for about 10 minutes face to face.
Wow.
No, we're gonna skip over that for the moment. So when you, so DJ, so you thought when you applied for this job, it's just like a job like any other kind of job, right? Like, oh, I'll apply. Did you know anything about being a peace officer, corrections, that kind of thing?
No, not at the time. Like I said, I just got out of the U.S. military, and I have a degree in criminal justice prior to going in. And I always wanted to get in some type of law enforcement. But when I got out of the Army in 1988 in California, there was a hiring freeze for LAPD, LA County Sheriff. But corrections was booming, and they needed people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you apply. Go ahead, Jeff.
So DJ, take us through your timeline, because I know that you were you started off as a CO or as a guard, then you went into internal affairs, and take us up to the story where you got involved with the Green Wall, and then we can kind of get into that story.
No problem. So I entered the academy, like I said, in March of '88. Landed my first assignment at Corcoran State Prison. Activated that prison. I stayed there for 4 years till 1992. And then I got sent down to another prison in the lower desert in 1992, at Calipatria State Prison, where I was an investigative services unit. I was the ISU officer for collecting evidence at that prison at the time. So I stayed down there for about 2 years, and then I got tired of the desert and the heat and all that, and I wanted to change. So I went to the infamous Pelican Bay State Prison in Northern California, where I went up there in March of 1994. And as soon as I landed up there, I met my old good friend that I worked at Corcoran State Prison, Joe Reynoso. He's a friend of mine to this day. He's my best friend to this day. So anyways, when I got there, he took me under his wing. He said, "Hey, I need an evidence officer. I need somebody to clean up my evidence." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." So I ended up becoming the evidence officer at Pelican Bay State Prison. And I was in charge of all the horrific crimes and all that, and just everything that happens inside the prison, I went to. So shortly after that, I left there in 1996, and I transferred to the prison called Salinas Valley State Prison, which is Monterey, California, Soledad. That's where the Green Wall actually started. Mm-hmm. So in 1996, I got there, and I activated. The warden told me, "Hey, I need you to set up my ISU unit, as an evidence, or set it up and get it going." I said, "No problem, sir." So I ended up staying there in that unit till about 1998. In November of 1998, I left that unit to go to the main yard line, the main line. And so actually when the green wall actually started was on Thanksgiving, November 1998, when the Southern Hispanic inmates attacked staff on the yard, and several staff members were injured. Nobody died, but several of them got beat up, and a couple of them I think one got stabbed or sliced by a weapon. So after that happened, there was a lieutenant on the yard that I worked with at Pelican Bay. He was in charge of that yard today. He goes, "Hey, Vodka, go get the crime scene kit. We don't have ISU here. It's a holiday, so they're not here. We need you to, can you go get the camera and you know what to do. I don't have to tell you what to do." I said, no problem, LT, no problem, Lieutenant. So I ended up photographing the inmates prior to being escorted back to their cells. I took my camera and I told the officers, bring them in handcuffs. And I had to photograph their front, their bodies, their back, their arms, because they didn't have no injuries on them. They weren't injured by staff. So when the guards brought them in, they looked at me and said, "Hey, what the heck, Monica? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing my job." I said, "Wait, you're going to be an inmate lover now? You turn to the other side?" I said, "No, you guys need to do your job." These were the members of the Green Wall members who formed the Green Wall members. I'm 6'5", 320 pounds. These guys are as big as me. Mm-hmm. They're not small. So at the end of the day, I said, "Hey, guys, I must have photographed 20 inmates at the time." So they were all mad at me and all that. So
they were mad at you because they didn't want you to photograph these guys?
That is correct, because they were going to tune them up, and which they did later on.
Okay.
They took them back to their housing units prior to putting them in the cells.
Right, DJ, wait 1 second. Why don't you explain what the Green Wall is and explain what tune them up means?
Okay, the Green Wall is, in the Department of Corrections, we wore green uniforms, green jumpsuits, and we also wore green pants or a khaki shirt. That was the other option uniform. So these guys call themselves the Green Wall, the 723. The 7th letter of the alphabet is G. The 23rd letter of the alphabet is W. So they actually call themselves the Green Wall. And they had a sign. That's a sign. Like, it looks like a W. They throw that up on the chest to identify, hey, we're the wall. We're the wall. That was a gang sign they used. So anyways, what they did, when I mean tune up, they actually took them back to the housing unit and took them behind the stairwell or a closet, uncuffed them or did not cuff them, and slammed them against the wall and put injuries on these guys. So later on,
violating their civil rights is
absolutely
what they're doing.
Absolutely. So these guys would tune all these guys up, and then they would destroy their property before they got in. They had TVs on themselves, throw them on the ground. They'd go and destroy their property. I'm talking $60,000+ in property that was destroyed. And soon enough, one of the inmates wrote to their mom or their parents on the streets, and the parents contacted Sacramento. 2 months later, here comes a big internal affairs unit down from Sacramento to do the investigation. And then they called me in because I took all the pictures. Now, what's really scary is my own union, which is a powerful union in California, CCPOA. They came down to represent the prison guards, the Green Wall members, in these hearings. Well, as I was going to the hearing, one of the reps said, "Hey, Vodka, we're going to go in there with you." And I looked at him and said, "I don't need your assistance. I'm the one that just took the pictures. I don't need assistance. I did nothing wrong." So when I went in there for 3 hours with these guys, and when I came out, I was labeled a rat, a snitch, a dead man walking.
So take us through the story of what you point out in your book is systematic corruption, abuse of power, abuse of violation of civil rights. I mean, this wasn't a isolated incident. You uncovered something that was rampant through the entire California state prison system.
So, DJ, was that your first experience of violation of civil rights? Was that your first incident?
Concerning the Green Wall, I mean, anything to do with the Green Wall, yes. That's when the Green Wall actually started up in the California Department of Corrections in March of 1998 at our prison. There was other incidents when I was at Corcoran State Prison, where the officers were betting on inmates do gladiator fights. And actually, they just came out with a movie years ago, and that actually the movie's called Felon with Val Kilmer in it. It's an awesome movie. And that was based on a true story. That was back when I was at Corcoran, but they didn't call themselves the Green Wall at that time. It was all about Thanksgiving riot at Salinas Valley State Prison in California.
So what are gladiator fights?
Gladiator fights were in the housing, the shoe housing unit at Corcoran. They housed the shoe security housing unit. That's where the high gang members, validated gang members were housed at. They weren't housed on the general population. They were in a lockup unit. Anyways, these prison guards would bet with each other and have money exchange, and they would put one or two inmates on the yard, and they knew there was going to be a fight, and who's going to win, who's going to come off the yard dead or alive. And that went on for several months, and then the FBI came. There was two people, a correctional officer and a correctional sergeant, who blew the whistle on that, and then the FBI came in and did investigations on it.
So what did you think about this? Like when your first experience of this, did you think it was just an isolated kind of thing? Did you know that it was an ongoing thing and that you would be swept up in this?
No, well, like I said, in 1998, after the Thanksgiving riot, it started with about five prison guards. And then shortly after that, they started recruiting. It went on from 1998, started getting heavier in 1999, 2000. So in 2001, when we had a new warden, we went through 7 wardens at this prison in 3 years. 7 wardens. I mean, some of the wardens come in and said, I don't want nothing to do with this prison, because the inmates were controlling the prison. They were running the prison. There was staff assaults, inmate assaults. They were just doing what they wanted to do. So they brought this warden in from Soledad State Prison, the prison next door to us. And he came in and he actually he formed the Green Wall. That's later in my book. It talks about all that in my book. And he told these prison guards of the Green Wall members, hey, go put fear and intimidation to these inmates. These inmates aren't going to control my prison. We're going to run the prison. So it actually, these Green Wall members, like I said, started real small and it just started growing with the backing of the warden.
So DJ, was this horrifying to you at the time? I mean, you were there and you were one of them. I mean, you were an employee alongside everyone else. Were you horrified? Is there something you wanted to do to stop it? What was your thinking?
Well, I want to clarify that I wasn't one of them. I wasn't a part of that. I want to clarify that. I didn't believe in it.
No, but you weren't an inmate. That's my point. You were someone.
I was a correctional officer. Yeah, right. I was a peace officer just like them. I was sort of a little bit scared because I'm working in a level 4 institution where most of the guys were in for 85% were in for murder and they weren't going home, and anything can happen. I mean, there's prison guards can ask an inmate, hey, do me a favor, I'll bring you in drugs or a cell phone. We need to take this officer out because he knows too much. So that was playing around in my mind a lot. So after in 2001, I was Lieutenant Lewis, who went to the Internal Affairs Unit as IA lieutenant, the one I helped with on the Thanksgiving riot, 1998. He came down and said, hey, do you know what's going on with these guys called the Green Wall and all that? I said, yeah, Greg, I know all about what's going on. Because we do me a favor, I need some type of report from you and all that. And I said, no problem. So I just blew it off for a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden I get a call by the warden's office. Hey, the secretary called, hey, the warden wants to see you, Officer Vodka. Can you come up here? I said, oh, I have to be properly relieved before I get up there. He goes, no, somebody will come down and get you. So within like 10 minutes, I was relieved. I had to go to the warden's office. So when I went to the warden's office, the warden called me in. He goes, hey, Officer Vodka, how's everything going? He was real friendly and all that. And all of a sudden he got into it. He goes, hey, do you know anything about these guys called the Green Wall, these Green Wall members? And I said, well, sir, yeah, I know a lot going on. And inmates confide on me, staff tell me what's going on. I know a lot what's going on. And he said, well, you know what? I need a report from you. I actually need a report from you. And this was on a Friday. Can you give it to me on Monday? I said, sir, I work with these guys. You know, how you going to protect me? Or he said, no, Officer Vodka, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. I said, well, I'll think about it, sir. He goes, no, you can't think about it. I'm giving you a direct order. You're going to write this report and get it to me on Monday morning. Otherwise, you'll be on administrative time off without leave, without pay. I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? What's going on here? So I contacted my friend Joe Reynoso, who's my best friend. And like I said, I worked with him in Pelican Bay. He was a squad sergeant, ISU sergeant, internal affairs. And I told him, and he said, just do what I told you. I trained you. I worked, type everything up, stamp it confidential, and turn it into him. So that Monday morning, I turned it into him. my hand carried it in and personally gave it to him. He said, "Thank you, Officer Vodka." I left the office. And then 2 months later, when I was working the vehicle sally port, because I work the vehicle sally port where all the vehicles come inside the prison, that's only entry. All of a sudden, I see these guys coming down from the ISU unit, the Green Wall members who I recognized. They came into my vehicle sally port and they go, "Hey, Vodka, we need to talk to you." And I said, "What's up?" He goes, "Let's go to your office." I went to my office and they quoted verbatim out of my memorandum what I wrote to the warden. They said, "You're done. You're a rat. You're a dead man walking. Watch your back." And they walked out of the thing like, "You got to be kidding me." I lost it, guys. I started throwing trash cans. I just lost it. And I asked to go home. And when I went home, I was contacted by the Office Inspector General in Sacramento, who works for the governor. They came 4 hours down to my house, pulled me into my house, and they interviewed me for 4 hours under tape. And shortly after that, 2 weeks later, they raided the prison. They came in with their vehicles and escorted the warden out of his office, took ISU out of the office, took computers and all that. And then I was at work at the time, and that was my last day. People were calling my phone and say, "You rat, you snitch," and hanging up on me and all that. And "You're dead," and just everything you can imagine.
Were you afraid that you were going to get killed?
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
what about,
absolutely.
What about your family?
At the time, I wasn't married. I didn't have a family then. I had a girlfriend at the time. My wife had, with my little son, moved up to Northern California in the Oregon area. And I was living alone where I was living at, and about an hour away from the prison. And absolutely. I was every time I was driving, I'd check my car. I'd go look under my car, see if there's anything in the car. And then on my drive home, I'd look in my rear view. I'd take different routes home and through the mountains, through the country, because I lived in an isolated area in the mountains where I lived at. And absolutely, I was scared.
So were you alone in this? Like, was there anybody else, other correction officers or peacemakers who witnessed this, or who said, "Hey, DJ, I know about this too," or, I could stand with you, or I could back you up, or, were you just solely by yourself and the one telling all this story?
I was, and then Lieutenant Lewis. Lieutenant Lewis was the Internal Affairs Lieutenant. He oversaw the Green Wall members at that prison. He was in charge of those members because they worked at ISU. He went directly to the warden and told the warden, "I want to remove these guys off my unit. Get them out of my unit. I don't want any part of them. Actually, I want to do an investigation on it." And the warden looked at him and said, "No, they're staying on that unit. That unit is my unit. You work for me, and leave them alone." And Lewis didn't like that. He came to me and said, I can't be here. So he got transferred overnight to another prison. He told on the warden to the higher ups. So he got moved to another prison. I'm like, holy crap. You guys left, I'm here by myself? And I said, "No, this can't happen." So they moved me over a night when the Inspector General came in, and with the help of Joe Reynoso, I called Sacramento. He called his bosses right up to the director's level and said, "You guys get Vodka out of there. He's in the hot pan. You better move him. You better move him." And they moved me overnight to another prison, which is never done before in the Department of Corrections for my own protection.
So these people were prepared to continue this Green Wall concept and gang mentality at the expense of their jobs, just to continue whatever it is they were doing?
That's correct. That's correct, because they had the backing from the warden. The warden at that time at that prison said, "Whatever you do, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen to you guys."
So DJ, we know from your story that this was a quest you were on, right? And you wound up taking this story to others. You testified before the California State Assembly. Why don't you tell us the story of where you took this story from there?
Shortly after I left the Pleasant Valley State Prison in 2001, was my last job at Pleasant Valley. Anyways, shortly after that, I retained a lawyer. My lawyer name was Lanny Tron. I met him in Camarillo, where I grew up at, and he, like I said, he's been by my side from day one to the end and to this day. He's a great man. He took on the Department of Corrections with me. So after that, I went to a couple hearings, and he got called by a senator. You guys probably know her back in the East Coast. She's a Congresswoman, Jackie Spear. Does
Yeah.
that sing about it? Well, Jackie Spear knows me very well. She contacted my lawyer, Lanny Tron, and said, hey, we're doing called the Government Oversight Committee in Sacramento at the state capitol. And we like Officer Vodka to come in and talk about the Green Wall, his story. And that was January 21st of 2004. And I ended up going to the Sacramento state capitol where Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor at the time. So anyways, when I got up there the night before, we stayed in a hotel, me, Lanny, and Joe Reynoso. We stayed in a hotel in Sacramento. And all of a sudden, a newspaper gets slid under my door at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I go down and grab it, and all of a sudden, my story hit the front page of the LA Times, and it went to Associated Press, the Green Wall. Mark Eriks put a nice story in about it. And shortly after that, I walked into the state capitol with 2 California Highway Patrol side by side. Joe Reynoso and my lawyer, we were walked in, and I was protected and armed into the state capitol. And when I opened the doors into the auditorium, it's like you open the doors, and all of a sudden the whole room was packed, no seats available. People were standing outside the wall. The senators were up there, and they called me down. I took an oath. I raised my right hand and took an oath, and for 2 hours. And when the first thing Jackie Spear said, she picked up the LA Times and said, what you're going to hear today is the most terrific story. I get a little emotional. Anyways, I testified and told the truth about what happened. And then shortly after that, after the hearing, I was moved off the grid in hiding for 6 months for my protection.
We'll give you, DJ, we'll give you a second to pull yourself together. I know, we know this is hard on you. So,
okay.
DJ, was the committee interested in what you had to say? I mean, was this something that you felt like you were being heard?
Absolutely. I mean, after I testified in the Senate hearings and all that, Senator Jackie Spear and Senator Gloria Romero at the time, they were oversight the committee to see what's going on. They, my story, my testimony changed policies and procedures within the Department of Corrections, and actually changed the law. They put a Senate bill in for whistleblowers in the Department of Corrections to come forward and to report, this kind of stuff, and to protect whistleblowers to come forward for the fear of retaliation or retribution. So that was signed into effect by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And like I said, my story changed policies and procedures within the department, where every staff member, doesn't matter if you're a peace officer or a worker or anybody who worked for the department, had to sit through 8 hours of mandatory training about the code of silence, and you will not be a part of this green wall.
So when did you decide to write the book? Like, how much time passed between that and your writing of the book? And did you end up leaving your job after that? Like what happened after you testified? They changed policies, procedures. What happened after that?
Shortly after that, like I said, I went and I had to go in hiding off the grid. I mean, I went way off the grid, 20 miles off the grid, 2 lock gates. Nobody could find me where I was. And shortly after that, I came out of hiding, and my father called me, who lived in one of the Western states, and say, hey, son, we know what's going on with you. Because that's all I talked to was my mom and dad and Joe Reynoso and Lanny Tron and my little boy, when I could talk to him, when he can understand what's going on. But my father called me and said, hey, can you come home? Your mom's dying of cancer. So I came home, and I ended up staying with my mom and dad. And shortly after that, my dad, about 5 months later, I was going up to doing deposition testimony, because we were in court proceedings I was suing the Department of Corrections. And I got a phone call.
And were you suing them for your emotional pain, for constructive firing, termination of your contract? What were you suing them for?
Yeah, well, I was never terminated. I was on industrial disability leave. I was off workman's comp, stress, PTSD.
Yeah.
So we're whistleblower retaliation, everything you can name as a civil lawsuit against what they did to me.
Sure.
So anyways, I ended up, like I said, then also my mom called. Oh no, excuse me. I met a young lady down here who's now my wife. She said, "Hey, you need to get home. You know, your dad is not doing good. What's wrong with my dad? He's in the hospital." And I said, "I'm taking care of your mom, so get home as quick as you can." So I got home. I drove 10 hours that night. I got home, and my father was in the hospital, and I went and saw my dad, and the doctor came out and said, "It's not good. Your father's not going to be around for much longer. He's dying of stomach cancer."
Wow.
And my last.
So this is at the same time as your mother being sick.
Yeah.
Okay.
So his last words to me before he died was, "Son, you need to write your book. Tell the world. Tell everybody what happened to you. Me and your mom are proud of you." So I wrote the book. And the book is powerful. The book tells all. There's in this book, there's names in it, there's evidence in it, everything that anybody wants to read. It's the most powerful book out there in the United States, or probably in the world. There's no book ever told. And this is the book.
Yes, hold it up and hold it still. Okay, and where can people get this book? Amazon, Barnes and Noble, that kind of thing?
Yes, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com.
No, we have the link on the website too.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
So I sat down. My wife said, after I buried my father and then I buried my mom 6 months later, I buried my mom and my wife told me, put everything together. I had all the evidence to support that book, and which I still have. And then took me about 2 years to put it together. And then I sent it to my lawyer, Lanny Tron. He went through everything with a fine tooth and comb. Him and his wife are both lawyers, and said, "Excellent, this is great. Let's get it published." And I self-published it. I control the rights. In 2009, I self-published through iUniverse.com, and here we are today.
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things that I found about the book is that you have source documents in the book. I mean, this is not third party. I mean, you're actually laying out the case of what happened and how systemic it was, and then how things changed because of the fact that you stood up basically for the rights of the inmates when it comes down to it, right?
That is absolutely correct, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in that book, there's physical evidence, there's documentation, there's deposition testimony, there's the corrective action plan, which the chief deputy warden, Edward Caden, worked under the warden at that prison where all this happened. Even the warden at that prison didn't tell his chief deputy warden, who was second in charge with him, saw him every day, didn't let him know anything going on. Mm-hmm. The warden at this prison had so many reports of the Green Wall in boxes under his desk in his office. He never told Sacramento what was going on at his prison. He kept his bosses out of the loop, didn't want to let them know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that was all came out later on. And Mr. Edward Caden, chief deputy warden, he wrote a great foreword in my book, foreword in my book.
So you wrote this book or published this book about a decade ago.
I was going to ask you what is the time frame? Yes, that's thank you, Jeff, because I was interested in that too.
So tell us about what's been going on for the last 10 years. Because usually when we speak to someone who's written a book, the books is coming out currently.
Now, currently.
Yeah, I mean they're promoting the book. Mm-hmm. But you've been out there. I know on being contacted by Hollywood production companies and by television companies. So explain to us what the last decade was about, and what's now the renewed interest, where you have some big name Hollywood people interested in this book.
And is your employment life over with the Department of Corrections?
Yeah.
Like, has that been settled? Did you are you still in suit with them?
Anyways, in 2006, I was retired from the Department of Corrections on a disability retirement. Mm-hmm. They settled with me in 2006, 2 weeks before trial. They settled with me in my lawsuit. The mediator, who was a retired judge at the time, told the Department of Corrections, I was across the table, you better not let Officer Vodka and his lawyer go to trial, because if you do, everything they worked on, and you guys know it, it's public information to whoever wants to get it. Once it gets filed and once it goes to court, anybody can pull the documents. Mm-hmm. And the Attorney General, the Department of Corrections they had lawyers. They didn't want to take on the case because it cost millions of dollars. So they got the Attorney General involved. And so basically I settled my case 2 weeks prior to trial. And then shortly after that, that's when I wrote my book. And then Jeff, you were asking about why it took so long to be discovered. One of the reasons is because look lately, criminal justice reform and prison reform in the United States is a hot topic. And everybody's looking online and internet, hey, let's find some stuff. And that's in the last year or two, in the last couple months, everybody wants to know about this.
Oh, some renewed interest in your story.
Exactly. Everybody from, I mean, I did a podcast in Australia a week ago. In Australia, these people are finding out the book in Australia. The UK, I did a podcast 2 weeks ago in the UK. This story is going around viral in the world and here in the United States. Look at Jeff. I mean, we found each other a couple weeks ago, and I'm so pleased for you guys to bring me on the show to talk about it, because it's a hot topic, and it's just taken off like fire. And speaking in Hollywood and all that, oh yeah, there's interest in there right now, and they're talking about right now to do a feature film regarding my story, because it's all about humanitarian.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel safe these days? I mean, do you feel safe? Do you feel like where you are now, that no harm will come to you or your family?
I'm always watching my back, and there's people out there and higher ups that all I have to do is make one phone call and they'll be where I'm at in a matter of immediate. And it's, yeah, I mean, I think doing what I did, exposing corruption behind the walls against staff, I'm not feared by the inmates. The inmates and the convicts in the prison system are happy what I did, because my lawyer, Lanny Tron, he gets letters from lots of people, especially when I expose it. We really appreciate what Officer Vodka did. He stood up for us, and he's a man of his word, his courage, and we need more people like him. And there's lawyers in California who've read my book and have been in contact with me and proud of me for what I did and use my book as a reference.
So this is obviously a story that's way larger than just California. I mean, there are issues in prisons all over the country, especially right now when people are on edge because of the pandemic. And so who have you been hearing from, and how have you been able to add value to this conversation about what's going on in the prisons right now?
Well, I was contacted a couple of weeks ago from a law firm up in San Francisco, California. They were representing the inmate population at a prison called RJD San Diego. It's a state prison. And they were contacted by several inmates in that facility that were ADA inmates, handicap inmates that are using wheelchairs or walkers or whatever. And these prison guards were abusing these inmates, pushing them out of their wheelchairs, telling these guys to walk to chow without using their walkers, and saying, you know, you don't need this stuff. And they were actually physically beating them up, breaking their arms and all that. So this law firm picked up the case. And these officers down at that prison were calling themselves the Green Wall. And we're the Green Wall, we're protected, you're not gonna, you know. So the law firm took on the case, and just a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I got the law firm sent me the 72-page document of the legal brief, and also the order signed by the judge telling the Department of Corrections and RJD that all the officers at that prison have to wear body cams within 60 days. And when I was in, we never wore body cams. Nobody was wearing body cams in there. So now they're requiring peace officers to wear body cams inside the prison.
So DJ, do you think that your story can help other facilities combat this kind of corruption? Do you provide some steps that prisons can take to look out for this kind of dereliction of duty and invasion of human disregard for human rights?
Absolutely. I mean, this story, I mean, is powerful for people who are entering the Department of Corrections, want to become a peace officer. You know, absolutely. I mean, I think even for the inmates, this is going to shock you. This book was banned from going into the California Department of Corrections. They would not let my book go in to the inmates. But some of the books have made it in, but they put my book on a ban list, so the inmates don't know what's going on. So even media, some of them, the media need to know about this book, because then everybody can expose. Hey, look, this officer stood up. What are we going to fix the problem? But yeah, I like to share my story to whoever wants to listen and to come in and talk about it, because reform has to start within the prison. You have to get rid of the rogue prison guards who make it hard on the incarcerated. That's where reform actually has to start. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but there has to be change, Babz.
DJ, we just heard in the last 2 days that that the Federal Bureau of Prisons has shut down the legal service emails that were going into the federal prisons by Corlinks. There's 2 large, I guess they're law firms, or they're electronic legal newsletters that go in, and they've been banned in the last 2 days. And in order to get an email into a prison, the inmate has to request you on their email list. So these weren't unsolicited emails; these were solicited. These are newsletters, emails that the inmates wanted to come in to inform them of their rights, ostensibly. And it just feels like we keep hearing these stories over and over again. And I know in our prep, one of the things you said to me was that not every prison officer, not every corrections officer is a bad guy. In fact, the overwhelming majority are good guys. There's just some outliers there that bring the whole system down. But it also feels like the system itself, from the top, is creating these systemic problems or violations of civil rights. And so how do you discern what's happening from a rogue bunch of guards, what's happening from BOP or DOJ or whatever? How do you tease all that out?
Well, you know, I mean, it looks like the higher ups don't want to face lawsuits or civil lawsuits or tie up the courts, because those higher ups there, they see stuff that's going on. You know, us correctional officers, we have no control of what the higher ups want to do, and they must see something that's going on. But that's the only that I can answer to that. I really haven't been following up with what you just said about the FBI and shutting down these emails and stuff like that. But I know in California that the inmates are not access to computers that can get emails on the outside and all that. Mm-hmm. But that has to start up from the higher ups, and maybe they just don't. Maybe there's a cover up going on, some type of corruption going on that they don't want. They ceased and desist this.
So, DJ, do you think that this is a component of training that needs to happen before anybody becomes a corrections officer or a peace officer? Like, is this something that can be turned around with the right kind of training and workshop programming kind of consistency?
Absolutely, Rod. So I think if they teach about the code of silence, and they don't talk a lot about the code of silence. When I went to the academy, we had probably an hour about the code of silence. That's it. But for somebody like me to go in and talk about it, to go and implement what happened to me and when I took an oath, it's a great idea. I think it has to be started at the academy level prior to going inside the prison system or any law enforcement, like police officers, county sheriff, corrections officers. They need to know what the code of silence and what it can do to you and get you in trouble, and also actually terminate you from your job if you do the wrong thing.
Because we've heard of the code of silence, Jeff, right? With police officers, the blue wall, and all of that. I had no idea about the green wall and that with corrections officers, and how prevalent that is.
I would highly like to go in and speak and talk about my story for an hour or 2 hours into academy class to bring that, just to let them know, hey, this exists. I was a veteran officer, 16 years. I wanted to do a 30-year career. My career was cut short, and for doing the right thing, I exposed the corruption. I did the right thing, and when I took an oath in the academy, when I raised my right hand, my mom and dad were there. My mom pinned the badge on me, and I took an oath. I didn't take an oath to adhere to the code of silence. I'm not into that code of silence stuff. I took an oath to protect and serve.
Mm. And TJ, what's your life like now? I mean, are you retired? Are you living comfortably? Are you looking over your shoulder every day? Do you keep a gun by your side? I mean, what's your life like?
It's every day. There's not a day I don't think about my story in the Green Wall. Like I said, I have PTSD, and I was diagnosed with PTSD due to this situation and workman's comp. I settled the workman's comp case, and I do take medication just to ease my mind, not think about it. But I live every day. Every day I live. My wife's great. She's been by my side for 16 years. My brother, who's been by my side, Joe Reynoso, Lanny Tron, people that I thought were close friends. I had some great friends in the Department of Corrections until I exposed the truth, and now those friends don't even talk to me anymore. And I'm just enjoying life every day.
Are you in therapy? Do you have a therapist?
Yeah, I do, and I talk to that person once a week, and sometimes on the phone. I physically go and see him, but I just I don't think about suicide. When this first happened to me, oh yeah, guys, I thought about ending my life, but I just didn't do it. I want to get the word out. I want to share my story. I want to get it out to people who want to listen, because it's the truth. The media doesn't get to see what goes behind the walls anywhere in the United States, even in California. They need to know about the truth, and I've got the truth.
And you believe that being a corrections officer or a peace officer is still a good career, still a good opportunity for someone.
Absolutely.
Or do you not think so?
No, absolutely. Like the California Department of Corrections in California is the highest paying correctional officers. Those guys right now are pulling $75,000, $80,000 a year without overtime. And they're high, and also you need is a high school diploma and pass the background and go to the academy. And I think this profession, any law enforcement profession is great. But the only thing is you know what? Just don't adhere to the code of silence. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Treat people with respect. People are human.
DJ, we have to end in a minute or so. Why don't you plug the book again? What's your website, and how do people get in touch with you?
I do have a website out there. I don't have it in front of me, but I can send it to you, Jeff.
I have it in front of me. It's triathlete ARTTRIATHL8R.wixsite.com. Is that you?
Yeah, 723, and that's Tony Fote. Tony Fote is a personal friend. He's my manager. He created that website. He's my get-go man to go, and he talks to people, and that's the people who need to contact him to get to me. And that's how Jeff found me through Tony and
you have a Twitter,
Twitter account.
GW Book 723, and you have a Facebook, The Green Wall Book, and the book can be found on Amazon.
And just word of mouth, word of mouth. I mean, this story, like I said, even Kim Kardashian, if she heard about this story, I think she would be interested, because criminal justice reform is huge. And Jeff knows it, and everybody knows what's going on. It's just a story needs to be told.
Well, I know you're in touch with our buddy Lewis Reed, who's been on our show a bunch of times. He's besties with Kim Kardashian. So talk to Lewis about it.
No, I just recently, like I said, I think Lewis found me through you, Jeff. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but I think that's how the link is. And I'm interested to share my story with Lewis and his foundation, whoever wants to listen, because there's no book. There's no book out there, anything compared to my story in the United States. I don't think, because if you were a correctional officer, guys, if I was a correctional officer and I was still working for the Department of Corrections and I wrote this book without nobody knowing, I'd be terminated on the spot. I'd be terminated on the spot. There's no such, they don't care about my civil rights or my due process. They'd terminate me if I published that book, if I was an active correctional officer.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, let me tell you, this is one powerful thing. When I approached my union, who's a powerful union in the Department of Corrections in California, they're the biggest in the United States, or probably the world. They're powerful. I approached the chapter president, and I went up to him, Mike Jimenez, one day, and I said, "Hey, Mike, I sent you documentation on what's going on with me and everything else." And he looked at me, he goes, "Oh, you're Officer Vodka. We've been advised not to talk to you," and he walked away from me. My own president that I paid union dues for 16 years told me to my face, and we can't listen to you, Officer Vodka, and he walked away from me. Because you know why? They protected the dirty prison guards. They protected the Green Wall in their representation termination hearings or any type of court matters.
I so appreciate your story. I'm sure there must be another book in you to continue, or to tell us what happens into the future for you. Because once you write one book, there has to be a second book, I imagine. There's probably more that you'd like to say, or at least talk about your life after this ordeal. But I do appreciate you coming on and giving us a different perspective on criminal justice, one that we hadn't heard before, Jeff, correct? Yeah, I don't think we've ever had this kind of conversation from this perspective.
Nope, another shard in the mosaic of thought for Criminal Justice Insider. How's that for?
Yes, that's well said. So, DJ, peace and blessings to you and your family. We hope to have you back on just to catch up and follow up again.
Yeah, when the movie comes out. How
you're doing?
When the movie comes out, we'll have you on.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, Babz and Jeff, and thanks for this great opportunity to come in and tell my story, and for people who out there are listening on your show.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Babz. Another important.
Yeah, that really was. We've never had anyone talk about criminal justice from that side, so that was quite illuminating.
Yeah. So thank you, Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Thank you, Jeff Grant and Lynn.
And you too, Babz. Andrew, we love you, Babz.
We love you. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Harry Droz.
Thank you, Harry. And thank you, DJ. Wonderful show. Thank you.
All right. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll be back.